Raton City Commission to order. Do we have roll call, please, Michael Ann?
Mayor Sagata.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Schuster.
Present.
Commissioner Chatterley.
Present.
Commissioner Chavez.
Present.
Commissioner Giacomo.
Present. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I appreciate your enthusiasm out there, but we gotta wait on Mr. Chavez a little bit, you know? Sometimes he's a little slow getting up, but that's all right, we're here for him. But thank you. Item number 4, recognition of visitors, citizen of the month, and/or presentation proclamations and that. We are going to say we've got all city offices closed this coming Monday, February 18th, in observance of President's Day. There will be a potential quorum of the Raton City Commission so that we may attend the 30th Annual Municipal Day. That will be held in Santa Fe at the La Fonda Hotel next Tuesday and Wednesday, the 19th and 20th. We will then be meeting with legislators at the Capitol building following the luncheon. Our next regular commission meeting will be Tuesday, February 26th, 6 p.m. here in the chambers. Also have a potential quorum of the City Commission so that they may attend a solar energy presentation at the RPS meeting to be held on Wednesday, February 27th, 5:30 here in the chambers. And we have a couple UROC awards. Mayor Pro Tem.
In case you have forgotten, the UROC Award is awarded to citizens who have been nominated by other citizens for doing outstanding work and showing that they care about Raton. And it can be anything from grand things or just consistent little things. And because the people who show that they care about Raton are the people who make this community great. So I'm going to start with Miss Tanya Menapace and say that because of... Yes, you do have to come up, and I'll meet you right there.
Okay.
If you don't, she'll throw that rock at you.
That's what I need.
Because of your actions, you have shown that you care, and we appreciate that caring. So
Okay.
you get your rock.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
And he's going to
okay.
take a picture.
All right.
There you go.
Okay,
Don't fumble.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Frank Ferry. You have shown repeatedly over the years that you care a great deal about that dog. And we just want to let you know we appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Way to go, Frank. Thank you, Frank. All righty, moving on down to item number 5, comments from the general public. This time we will entertain any comments from the public. They're all leaving, so we must be doing something right. All right, thanks for coming, folks. All right, seeing no one that wants to address the commission at this time, we'll move into the business portion of the meeting. Item 6A, approval of the January 22nd, 2018 regular commission meeting minutes. You've all had a chance to look at them, I hope.
Right.
One little typo on page, on the second half, the third line down. There should be a comma after city seal, between city seal and wayfinding. That's the only one I found.
I think there was also a typo under Mayor Pro Tem Schuster's report. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th line down in front of the word reported, there was a T there. I've corrected that.
Okay.
So I will move to approve minutes as corrected.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the amended minutes. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item B, we are going to postpone till a later date. Mr. Chatterley
has become ill, so we're going to hold off on that. Item C, public hearing on 2019-2021 DBE goals for Cruz Field Municipal Airport. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, you'll remember we have talked about this throughout the past year pretty consistently, but we have planned a number of projects at Raton Municipal Airport Cruz Field. Typically, this funding arrangement on a project at the airport would consist of 90% funding from Federal Aviation Administration, 5% from state aviation, and 5% in local funds. When you accept federal funds or funds through this program, there are a number of requirements that go along with this. One of those is the evaluation of disadvantaged business enterprise in setting goals, as you see in the documents that you have, and conducting a public hearing which is held at the commission meeting for input of the public. So we are looking for that input from the public. The evaluation for disadvantaged business goals is in the paperwork that you have in front of you. The disadvantaged business goal is 6.69%, and you see the contract amount there. And what that means is that percentage of the contract should be awarded to a recognized disadvantaged business enterprise. And that's a typical requirement on a project that is funded in this manner. And we, the staff, certainly agree with the findings of our consultant here. And again, Mayor, we look for input of the public on this issue.
Is there anyone wishing to address the commission at this time regarding this?
What did the consultant find? I mean, for the DBE, I mean, not too familiar with it. I've done a little research on it, but
Right. So simply,
I don't know exactly what Dawson's goals are. I kind of know they're pulled out maybe 90%. I kind of have some mixed feelings on it.
okay, well, Mayor and Commission, to address the comment, our consultant on airport matters has evaluated things specific to Raton, the nature of the construction. You see a let's say a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 page evaluation there, and they have basically the findings, to simplify this, would be of the contract, DOT assisted contract amount of $563,000 and some change. 6.69% of that would go to a disadvantaged business enterprise, which is a business that is recognized as a DBE business by the state of New Mexico. And so that's typical on work that we've done at the airport. This would apply to our upcoming taxiway project, and we've talked about a couple of other projects.
Right.
So simply stated, yeah,
That's for the 560,000 is for the taxiway.
Correct.
Construction and the apron and.
correct. So there are firms that meet this. We have not had a problem meeting the goal in the past, but a portion of that construction cost would go to a recognized DBE contractor or subcontractor.
It's not necessarily for a business at the airport, it's.
That's correct. This is just the construction phase that's funded by FAA. However, anything to do with express aviation operations, not affected by that, not affected.
I just need clarification.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, this is the public hearing portion of this. Seeing no other comments, we'll move on to item D, which is deliberate and act on 2019-2021 DBE goals for Cruz Field Municipal Airport. I think Mr. Berry's done a pretty good job explaining. You guys have any questions or additional comments?
I'll move to approve 2019-2021 DBE goals for the Cruz Field Municipal Airport.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any further discussion?
I just wanted to make one comment. I did discuss with Kent Breyer that we would post this on our website also, so it will be available on the website.
Okay.
And we'll probably just leave it there for the 3-year period
Okay.
until we have to do this again in 2021.
Wow, sounds good. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Item E, deliberate and act on memorandum of understanding between U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Police and the Raton Police Department. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, our Raton Police Department has received the letter that you have in your packet from the Department of Veteran Affairs Police, which is something I didn't know really existed until we received this letter, and we are bringing it to the commission. The Department of Veteran Affairs has asked the commission to consider this memorandum of understanding, which basically says that if there is a need for a law enforcement response at the Veterans Administration facility in Raton, we would agree to respond, which naturally, with or without a memorandum of understanding, our emergency services will respond to any call for service. And so it's, I think, as simple as that. We recommend approval of the MOU. They talk about the partnership there, but simply we would respond to any call for service.
Okay.
And we would furthermore, Mayor, sorry, but we would cooperate with the VA or their law enforcement people as they requested. So if there's any issue about command and control, we would defer to them in the way that they requested.
Sure. I think it does mention if there's any like hostage thing, the FBI would take over and
Correct.
so.
Well, I too had never heard of this Veterans Police, and then when I checked up on it, in the bigger cities, they have security forces that are there, and they're just for that case, if there's a hostage or somebody flips out or goes off the rocker, then they act on it, so.
Correct. I will move to approve.
And the agreement is set up for signature of the Chief of Police, John Garcia. So if you consider approval of that, if we could add that to your authorization for the Chief of Police to sign that agreement.
I will move to approve the memorandum of understanding between U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Police and the Raton Police Department authorizing Police Chief John Garcia to sign.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the MOU between Veteran Affairs Police and Raton Police Department. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, deliberate and act on Raton Year Pass Brand Partnership Agreement. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, I would defer to Commissioner Chatterley on this item. Commissioner Chatterley has worked with our brand committee that brings this to the commission for your consideration tonight. And so, Commissioner, I would kick it over to you.
Basically, what we've done is come up with a partnership agreement for anyone who'd like to use the digital tools that we have and the branding and the style guide with the logo and the tagline. And we've modeled it off of the New Mexico True Agreement with a few alterations that suited us a little better. And what our plan would be to go ahead and start getting these partnership agreements out along with a copy of the style guide. And then once they were signed and brought back to, we're hoping that they can be turned in at City Hall, and Desiree can maybe let us know, and then we'll give access to these partners through a invitation system to a Google Drive that then would have all the digital elements that they would need to produce or add branded information to their current advertising or brochures or whatever they wanted to do with it. And that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So if somebody wanted to create some t-shirts with our brand on it, they would have to come to the commission for approval or just someone designated in the city?
So that's, in the first paragraph, we had the city of Raton or its designee.
Okay.
And so it would be,
Did not see
that,
that.
so the two things that would be pre-approved, not, they wouldn't have to have every single ad approved, but video in general would have to be pre-approved, and souvenir items, we're trying to figure out, we need to have a merchandising meeting really with several people and figure out the best thing, because we want it to be fair, and we also want to use local vendors to produce t-shirts and whatnot, so there's a lot of, that has to be worked out, so right now, we're not allowing anyone to sell anything unless it's pre-approved. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agreement, Raton Your Pass Brand Partnership. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item G, deliberate and act on lease agreement between the City of Raton and Mastec North America, Inc. to lease space at Armex for storage of materials and equipment. Mr. Barry.
Mayor and Commission, Mastec North America, Inc. is a contractor that has approached the city of Raton with the lease agreement that you have in your packet, and they have informed us that they have been retained to construct a high-speed fiber optic line generally between Denver and El Paso, and they will be undertaking this work shortly. And their request to the city of Raton is that they could lease a yard in which they could store material and equipment during this term, and they estimate that to be a year. I think in the lease agreement they offer to pay $1,000 a month in rent, and like I say, we anticipate about 12 months that they'll be in the area. They do this at various locations between Denver and El Paso, and they would like your approval to do that in Raton. So you have the lease agreement in front of you, and I have reviewed the lease agreement, and my recommendation is it's good. We would agree to everything with one exception. On page 5, you see section 13, which deals with insurance, and then under B, that term requires the landlord, which would be the city of Raton, to carry general commercial liability insurance that would name the tenant, that would be Mastec, as additional insured. That's a problem for us because we do carry commercial general liability insurance. However, our insurer, which is New Mexico Self-Insurers Fund, has said they will not name Mastec as an additional insured. That is the issue. So I would offer two options here. One is New Mexico Self-Insurers has offered to cover the equipment and the materials during this time. We can do that under our general coverage plan, and Mastec would have to revise the agreement and agree to that. So we passed that along to them, and they are considering that. Or secondly, we would have to carry separate insurance coverage to meet this requirement. And I've contacted some local insurance companies about doing that, and that would just be for the proposed location, and there would be an additional cost to that. And my recommendation to you is that we would add that cost into this agreement, and Mastec would have to agree to pay the lease of the $1,000 a month plus whatever the additional coverage would be. So I would offer those two things to the contractor, and if we can't reach agreement on either one of those options, my recommendation to you would be to decline to execute the agreement. Now, Mastec would like to commence with this fairly shortly, so I would ask that you consider the agreement contingent upon the resolution, as I mentioned, of the additional insured issue.
Okay. I have one question too, Mr. Barry. On page 8, section 22, it says tenant shall be permitted to assign this lease or sublet all or any part of the premises without the consent of the landlord to a parent, subsidiary, or affiliated corporation. Is that standard, or?
Well, I think what they're saying there is that as a contractor, you know, if they go out and XYZ Corporation comes in, that we will not terminate the agreement or, yeah, you know, kick them out. And I think we would be okay with that. Obviously, the consent might be a little unwieldy, and, you know, you don't know what happens there. But I think we would not have a problem with that. On the surface, it seems like that, you know.
Just the way it read, it was kind
Yeah,
of,
takes that away from us, but I would not see a problem with that.
Okay.
And just to clarify, from the agenda states the Armex building, but is the Hereford lot that we're discussing?
It is, yes, Commissioner.
I thought it was on
We came up with a different option.
there. Okay, sorry.
It does say Armex on the agreement, on the agenda. However, we did offer several options, and it's actually the East Hereford yard that we would store the equipment at. So.
That was my next question, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Berry?
I will move to approve the lease agreement that's contingent upon working out said insurance difficulties.
And I noticed that they don't have that monthly base rent
They
in
do
here,
not
but
put that in here.
$1,000 a month is the amount that we're talking about.
And we need to authorize signing, it doesn't have a date on it.
I think we would add that to your approval if you consider approval.
All right, authorizing city manager, Mr. Scott Berry, to sign as landlord. For the city of Raton.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the agreement with the contingent upon working out the insurance differences and the added cost to the insurance if we were to buy that, and authorizing Mr. Berry to act as the signature on this contract. Is there any further questions? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item H, deliberate and act on bid award for new four-wheel drive sport utility vehicles. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, you have some documentation in your packet and a recommendation for award. On the second page, you see that the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission has approved our fire department to expend fire protection fund monies to finance the cost of 2 new command units. So we have requested sealed bids for 2 new command units, and we received 1 bid. That was from Phil Long Ford of Raton. Those are an expedition type vehicle. So the total of that, of both vehicles, is $108,620. And I would recommend award of that contract to Phil Long Ford to supply those 2 command vehicles.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Berry?
I'll make a motion to approve bid award for new four-wheel drive sport utility vehicle.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid for the new four-wheel drive sport utility vehicles to Phil Long Ford of Raton. Is there any further discussion?
Commissioner Chatterley, were you the second?
Yes. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item I, deliberate and act on authorization to purchase fire department bunker gear utilizing an existing master price agreement with Municipal Emergency Services, Inc. / Lawman Supply Company. Mr. Berry.
Mayor Commission, the Fire Chief, Chief Espinoza, had to attend a meeting in Santa Fe today, but he asked me to relay to you that the proposal here is to replace bunker gear, which is obsolete, with some new equipment that we really need in the course of doing their job of either structure fire or wildland fire. There again, we are looking at fire protection funds for this amount. You see a quote from Municipal Emergency Services on an established contract. A master price agreement that our city clerk has reviewed and done the due diligence on, and I would invite the city clerk to add her comments to this, but that's how we would complete the procurement. We anticipate that this would be about over 50% less expensive than if we ask for sealed bids. So our recommendation is to complete the purchase of bunker gear through this contract in the amount of $49,500.
Any comments or questions? Michael Ann, would you like to say anything?
You've got the quote in your packet. It is for $49,500, and we would be purchasing as a member agency off of a master price agreement. They do specialize in giving discounted pricing to governmental entities for police and fire gear. As the city manager said, and Chief Espinoza, this is extremely discounted versus what it would cost us to go out to bid. I've been in contact with Michael Dennison, who's our sales rep that provided this quote, and that's who Chief Espinoza is going to work with to purchase the gear. So upon your acceptance this evening, we would issue a purchase order referencing our authorized member number under this master price agreement. And then they could extend that pricing to us for the $49,500.
Any questions?
I make a motion to approve authorization to purchase fire department bunker gear utilizing the existing master price agreement with Municipal Emergency Services, Inc., Lawman Supply Company.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the quote and to purchase the equipment. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item J, deliberate and act on RFP award and professional services agreement with Raton Country Club for lease of governmental liquor license. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, I'm going to give you some general comments on this item, and then I'm going to ask the city clerk to correct me, make revisions, and clean up my language. And so, in general, several years ago, we found the need to apply for a governmental liquor license for use at our convention center because the transfer of a private liquor license really did not work in Raton anymore. So in order to host things like wedding receptions there, this was something that was really demanded, and City of Raton did obtain that governmental liquor license from the state. And then subsequently, we asked for a contractor to perform the service. So if a reception was being held, a contractor would provide certified personnel to operate within the requirements that the state establishes. And so back then, we had asked for proposals. We got a couple. It was awarded to the Raton Country Club. That has been in place since 2015, I believe, and we have reached a point where we needed to reissue that request for proposals. The only response that we got was from Raton Country Club. It's been a good, workable solution to conducting those kind of events at the country club. We anticipate, and my recommendation to you is that we approve Raton Country Club again as our contractor for the governmental liquor license services at the, and this is specific to the convention center, no other facility. So I will yield the floor to Michael Land then, and she has all of the detailed information.
So yes, we did solicit requests for proposals, and the country club was the only proposal that we received. So our recommendation is this evening to go ahead and award that and enter into an agreement with them. As far as time goes, we're kind of under the gun to get this approved. Our current liquor license does expire February 28th, and so we're trying to avoid any lapse so that we can still continue to book, hopefully, some events in March if the need is to serve alcohol. But we would try to execute all of the agreements as quickly as possible and get that to alcohol and gaming. So it is kind of a slow turnaround, but I think we're doing it soon enough that we could get maybe even at least a temporary liquor license assigned starting March 1st.
Is there any fee associated with our renewing?
Yes, we do renew every year in December, by December 1st, and it's about $1,200 because I think we also pay an additional fee for Sunday sales. The country club was already approved under our previous agreement to be the official leasee of our liquor license, and so there was an additional fee that we had to do for that. But it's my understanding, I don't think we have to go through that process again if we're renewing with the same
Okay.
vendor. And then other than that, anytime there's a change of officers with city commission or their board, we do incur some fees that we have to submit that change of officer information. So we've tried real hard to stay in compliance with all of their rules and regulations. We do have Joe Pobar here this evening who submitted the proposals, so I don't know, did you want to make any comments or?
No, we're excited to continue operating the leasing for y'all, and I think we've done a pretty good job in the last 5 years based on David Swanson. I'm taking over as the general manager of the country club, so I'll be overseeing that. Mercy will still be part of that as well. So there really is no changes to what we've done or what we're planning on going forward with.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the leasing government liquor license to the Raton Country Club.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agreement between Raton Country Club for the leasing of the governmental liquor license. Is there any further discussion?
Just to clarify also, this is a one-year agreement with the option of 3 additional one-year terms.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item K, deliberate and act on Resolution 2019-08, 2019/2020 LGRF Cooperative Application. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, the New Mexico Department of Transportation has their program, which we talk about here frequently, the Local Government Road Fund. And so that is a way for, and it's a legislative funded pool of money to fund local road projects. And there are 2 elements that the city of Raton or a municipality is eligible to apply for. And one is the cooperative agreement program. And then secondly, we'll talk about this next, is the municipal arterial program. And so under the cooperative agreement program, there really is pretty general qualifications for a project that the commission would pick and choose to apply for. We've been informed, as we are every time at this year, that applications are due in early March, So what is required is a resolution from the commission stating your intent, and I've drafted that resolution for you. It requires that we estimate what the project would cost and that we would commit to 25% of that project cost. So I have brought that to you, and I have performed an evaluation of projects that might be a priority for the city of Raton and be eligible for co-op fundings and meet our priorities here. And I have identified one that I've put in the resolution. That is the reconstruction of Kearney Avenue. Now that's based on this assessment that Kearney Avenue serves a developed residential area. It's a fairly high traffic residential street, a collector type street, and it's in very poor condition. And so we have spent a lot of time trying to keep that road serviceable, and we try to prioritize streets like that that require an excessive amount of maintenance, because if we reconstruct those, we may not have to go back to that street for 5 years or more, and it makes our work more efficient. So I have brought that to you, the reconstruction of Kearney Avenue. That would be from South 2nd Street to Brilliant. And you can see the amounts that I estimate for this project. I would estimate that to complete that work, and that would include cold milling and a hot mix asphalt overlay of that pavement, would cost about $150,000. We would commit to 25% of that amount, or $37,500, which we would go to our gas tax fund for. So the schedule would look like this. We would submit the application for funding in March. We generally hear about an award on this or the MAP in June or July, and then generally we see a grant agreement in September, October. And so since it's late in the year, we would generally try to design that project and set it up then for construction in the following summer, which in this case would be summer of 2020.
Any comments, questions?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2019-08, 2019-2020 RGRF cooperative application.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve the cooperative application for 2019-2020 LGRF. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item L, along those lines, deliberate and act on resolution 2019-09, the 2019-20, I believe that should say 2020, NMDOT map application. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, similar to our last item, this is through the New Mexico DOT Local Government Road Fund project. This would be in reference to submission of an application for municipal arterial funding. So that, as stated, would apply to an arterial type of roadway. So it's much more limited than the co-op agreement. We do have a number of candidate streets. You'll remember that recently Hospital Drive was reconstructed under this MAP program. Generally, a little higher dollars are available through the MAP. I'd say it's a little more difficult to get an award through this. This is something that really goes directly to the Transportation Commission for consideration. But we have completed Hospital Drive. We've closed out that MAP. We do not have a current one. And I have identified candidate streets for a potential application here. So what I've brought you tonight under this resolution would be resurfacing of 5th Street, and we would talk about all of South 5th Street and a portion of North 5th Street. That really would be everything you see on the west part of Raton here, from Tiger Drive to Moulton Avenue, I believe. And so, similar to the co-op, under this resolution, your consideration of this resolution, you would assure the DOT that you would bring 25% of the total project funds. And so that would be $75,000 of city funds and a total project amount of $300,000 to resurface that. That is a lot of roadway, so we would plan on primarily using a chip seal application to resurface that roadway. We think that's a good candidate for that. Fifth Street, a portion of South Fifth Street, was at one time designated New Mexico State Highway 476, along with Red River Road or Gardner Road. And then subsequently, the DOT at some point had graciously given that to the city of Raton, so we're now responsible for those. So we think that it's a good candidate because it does serve educational facilities, namely the high school, large residential area, serves as an arterial in Raton, and formerly was designated as a state highway and was abandoned by DOT. So, Mayor and Commission, if I can answer any additional questions, I will hold up there.
Yeah, I remember when there was a double yellow line running all the way down.
Yeah.
Are those city funds out of gas tax as well?
That's correct, Commissioner. Yes.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2019-09, 2019, 2010, 20, Mexico dot map application.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the application for the NMDOT map application, 2019-2020 for Fifth Street. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item M, Mr. Berry, do you want to take these one at a time here since the individual's here, or do you want to?
I believe we do, Mayor. I
Okay.
think we want to consider those one at a time.
All right, so deliberate and act on economic development service contracts. First up, Grow Raton. Mr. Berry?
Mayor and Commission, in regard to all three of these are submitted to you as a result of requests for proposals for business and economic development services. Something that the Commission has considered since we received those proposals on November 6th. And you recall that back on November 6th, we received a number of diverse proposals that I think all had merit and were considered by the Commission. And the items that you see listed here are a follow-up to the actions that the Commission had previously taken as far as awarding funds to some of these proposals. So first of all, we have an agreement with Grow Raton. Grow Raton has proposed generally to hire a community coordinator for programs that they have detailed in their proposal and discussed with the Commission. Mr. Jenkins is here representing Grow Raton. We bring that to you first because Grow Raton has retained that community coordinator. She is on the job, and Mr. Jenkins, I don't know if you want to come forward and tell us about where you're at in more detail and how things are proceeding.
Mayor and Commission members, Mr. Mayor, we hired the new community coordinator as of January 29th. So she's been on the job a little less than 2 weeks. During that time, she's already received inquiries from 3 different businesses or entrepreneurs for services under the technical assistance portion of the RCAC grant. And I think that we intend, and I know we intend to go ahead and contact in order of the likelihood of businesses availing themselves of these services, any number of the businesses that are currently in our community. One of the people who's contacted her is an entrepreneur who was seeking a plumbing license. Hasn't been able to pass the plumbing test yet, but he had previously a drainage services company, and he wanted to know how he could go ahead and bring that company back online in an expanded manner and later turn into expanding to plumbing services. Another one is a lady who wishes to have a med flight service that would be stationed here in Raton. As you know, the contract that the MCMC had with MedFlight Service, they originally had intended to base their helicopter at the hospital and later withdrew that. And so this would be a great boon to us to have a helicopter station here for immediate MedFlight services and not having to depend on having another helicopter come in. I just mention those as examples of the type of work that in just 2 weeks she's already accomplished. You'll be seeing information about on our Facebook page, and we'll be contacting members of the community about a program that's called Recharge Our Community Economy. And we've already got invitations that have been sent out and received just yesterday our first confirmation of a reservation for that program. So we're very excited. The program will commence March 21st, and we feel we have plenty of time between now and then to encourage a number of community leaders and business owners to participate in that program. I just cannot say enough about the quality of the young lady we were able to hire. She has a master's in mass communication on top of a bachelor's in public relations and graphic design. She has on her own shared with us during her interview process that there was a business that newly opened, and she stopped in and said, "Do you folks take credit cards?" And they said, "No." I said, "Would you like me to show you how you can do that?" And just on her own, set them up to use the Foursquare credit card application on their mobile phone at that site. This woman has a lot of initiative, self-drive, and is really committed as a native of Raton to improving our local economy.
So, Mayor and Commissioner, I think that Grow Raton had, originally planned to start this relationship back in December. They have some other funds that go to the program that they described. So we've tried to bring this to you, but we got caught up in holidays, legislature starting, other things. So the way this is set up, is my understanding, and I don't always remember everything as good as I should, but that the commission had had budgeted $10,000 of our economic development budget for this purpose, and I think Grow Raton's request was that they could receive $2,000 a month. So I've set that up with your approval tonight that we could do that through the remaining part of this fiscal year, February through June. We could start that process if everybody agrees to that. We're probably in a hurry as far as giving Grow Raton time to meet with their board of directors and approve that. So, Paul, I would ask you where you're at with your board.
Our board will meet tomorrow
Okay.
night at 5:30, and it's on the agenda to act on approval of the agreement.
So we would anticipate their approval, date the agreement then tomorrow, and move forward with it as you see in the agreement. This is a not-for-profit type of agreement that I have consulted with the New Mexico Economic Development Department on to get guidance on that, and we believe that it conforms with all of the leader requirements.
Mr. Berry has provided us with a copy of the proposed agreement, and we are fully versed in the requirements, reporting requirements, and the payment process. And I see no reason why our board would not completely approve it.
Question, Mr. Jenkins, the
Yes.
person you hired, is she local or is she out of town?
No, she is Bretonian by birth, and she did go away to get her bachelor's and master's, but has come back to the community. Both she and her husband are very active, and she fully intends to do everything she can to improve our local economy.
Thank you.
Very good.
What's her name?
Yeah.
Patricia Duran.
Tricia Duran, all righty, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Jenkins or Mr. Barry? Would entertain a motion.
I will move to approve the service agreement between the City of Raton and Grow Raton.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to accept the service agreement between the City of Raton and Grow Raton. Is there any further comment? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, High Bay Enterprises. Mr. Barry?
Mayor, Commissioner, we do have Mr. Rodman present here. You have talked to Mr. Rodman a number of times on the proposal for High Bay Enterprises. The distinction here is that this is economic development incentive to a for-profit entity. So that has got some different requirements under the LEDA statute and under our local economic development ordinance. And so the short story is we are still working on that agreement. I will have set up a meeting with Mr. Rodman for the morning. He has a group. We'll have some discussion about the agreement, but some of those elements that the state statute would require, in addition to the scope of work and performance criteria, are clawback provisions and security in that agreement. So we would anticipate coming back with that agreement again at the February 26th meeting, but we do have a little work to do on that. I did get a rough draft to Mr. Rodman, so he generally knows what the city is proposing in that regard, but we've done some additional work on that since then. So I think that Mr. Rodman is not quite up to speed on the city's proposal. However, Mr. Rodman, I don't know if you would like to address the commission in regard to this. I think it's our intent to bring this back to you, and I think we had a lot of positive thoughts about the proposal and proceed with the proposed project.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, I got a copy of the agreement just a couple days ago and went through some things and met with my partners. And so we've got a meeting scheduled tomorrow. Mr. Jenkins is also going to be there because he actually, Grow Raton put that proposal together. And so he'll be coming to that meeting with me. And so we're going to meet again on it. And so we're just trying to make sure I understand everything and then try to get that to a point where we can bring it back to you. Just want to thank you for the opportunity.
Good, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Rodman?
So I think the action here, Mayor, would be to postpone the consideration of High Bay Enterprises Economic Development Service contract until February 26th.
I so move.
I'll second.
We have a motion and 2 seconds to postpone the High Bay Enterprises agreement until the February 26th meeting?
February 26th.
February 26th meeting. Any additional comments, questions? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the Center for Community Innovation, Mr. Barry.
Mayor and Commission, you have a economic development service agreement in your packet for the Northeastern New Mexico Educational Foundation, doing business as the Center for Community Innovation. Whew, that's a mouthful. Mr. Peterson is at our meeting tonight, and he's brought some guests with him, which I would like to call on you in a minute, Jeff, to talk about your program. However, when we talked about the proposal from the center, in my crafting the agreement, I really broke that up into two distinctly separate scope of work, and we're treating it really as two separate agreements. So the portion that you see here, in which I think the scope of work was very clear, is funding the Creative Startups Pre-Accelerator Lab / Entrepreneur Boot Camp. And so, again, in my memory of this, the commission agreed to fund the amount of $21,000. We had generally placed a generic disbursement of the funds, but I think that the language that we have in here is adequate for what Jeff has described to me as far as what he anticipates on drawing on those funds. In addition, the commission had awarded a lump sum amount of $10,000 to the center, and we're going to talk about the description of the scope of work and bring another agreement to you on that amount at the February 26th meeting. So that's, I think, my plan is to consider action here tonight. Again, Jeff, I would have you approach the commission, talk about your guests, your program, and then as far as your organization and approval of the agreement, you know, how your process works on that.
Right. So, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Mayor. So yes, I did receive the application, reviewed that, and that meets with the contractual agreements we have set, and looks fine to move ahead. We are kicking off this project actually tomorrow with a meeting tomorrow morning in Raton with some of the stakeholders, and then tomorrow in Trinidad with some of the stakeholders. And hot off the highway and not caught by our local constabulary racing down 2nd Street is two of the principals
We
of I've invited to help just give an introduction and talk just briefly about their project. But the general plan right now is kick this off tomorrow morning with introductions with the groups of Trinidad and Raton. And then in March, we will be opening applications for entrepreneurs, and we'll spend about 3 to 4 weeks advertising and recruiting entrepreneurs. In April, we'll take the time to set up a panel and go through a selection process with criteria and work with Creative Startup staff to select the entrepreneurs. Again, 8 from Raton businesses, 8 from Trinidad. And then in May, we'll kick off the program. 4-week program, pretty intensive 4 weeks, finishing with a pitch day where they do the whole pitch deck kind of thing. And then what I think is shaping up really fun is soon thereafter, maybe another couple weeks after the participants have really digested their work, we'll have a kind of a Shark Tank kind of a day where we're lining up some investing money and some money. So part of the $10,000, for example, that Scott was mentioning, the center will be awarded. The board has approved, the center board has approved $1,000 of that towards prize money. International Bank has committed $2,000 for prize money, working with Jay Chimino's folks right now to perhaps contribute. And we'll see what else we can dig up in terms of services and prize money, and really make it a community effort to support new entrepreneurs in the community. So any questions about the general scope there before I introduce our fine guests from Santa Fe and Albuquerque?
Any questions? Okay, go ahead.
So I have with us today Dr. Alice Loy.
Hi.
She's the founder of Creative Startups, and as well Julia Youngs, who's a program manager for Creative Startups and is sort of my point of contact for a lot of the details. And they were both, of course, involved in the libraries as launch pads that we ran in Raton with success. So very happy to have them here, and just wanted to give them a chance to introduce themselves and say just a quick word about it.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having us. We're delighted to be here. Creative Startups, based in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. We're a nonprofit organization founded, 14 years ago almost. And we're one of the leading accelerator programs for creative companies globally. We got started with the belief that New Mexico is rich in culture, but we need to do a better job tackling poverty, and we can do that through entrepreneurship. So we are a team of about 10 people. We work here in the US, we work in Europe, Asia, the Middle East. We have found in Jeff a really great partner. So we work everywhere and try to find people who can help us build capacity in that community so that we can sort of give over what we do, help them get going, but then do it in their own community. And it's rare that we find someone as talented as Jeff, and I'm not just saying that, you know that we've said this to him before. So we're excited to be here. And we've just turned in a different grant to the Kauffman Foundation in which we list Raton as, and it's a super competitive grant, but we're also working on an EDA grant, mostly because Jeff has created a sort of base for us here where we can continue to have a very sustained impact, we hope. So,
Cool.
Yeah, any questions?
Welcome, you're here, though.
We're very
Yeah.
excited.
Sorry, we took a little longer to get here than we thought, but we got
It's all right.
That's
Take
okay.
us down.
You made it in time.
Welcome to
I know,
Raton.
we looked
Yeah.
really cool coming in just right on time.
Yes, you did.
Appreciate it. Any other questions or comments for anyone?
LOY.
So Jeff, you had a comment on the disbursement of funds, and I think what you made a comment with our wording here, we are in agreement that that schedule will work. We can revise language here if you and your organization would like, but we agree to that disbursement schedule. And then I guess my question would be, as far as your board taking action or having you execute the agreement, what, your process is.
We just recently met and we've reviewed this project, and although we didn't have the contract in front of us, the board has approved the project ongoing, so
Okay.
I think we're fine to move ahead.
All right, if you like the agreement, it's my recommendation to the board that we then proceed with approval of the agreement and the project.
Any other comments, questions from Mr. Berry? Have his recommendation?
I'll make a motion to approve the Economic Development Services Agreement with the Center for Community Innovation for the Creative Startups portion of $21,000.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the economic development contract with the Center for Community Innovation regarding the creative startups portion. Is there any additional comments? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item N, deliberate and act on municipal advisory agreement between the City of Raton and RBC Capital Markets LLC. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission in general, the item has to do with financing for the proposed solid waste transfer station. And you'll remember some time back, the commission had approved an agreement with Modrell Sperling law firm to provide legal guidance in preparing this financing. The proposal is that we would seek financing that would be similar to the interim financing that Waterworks has put in place for the filter plant project, in which that interim financing was scheduled through a commercial bank, and we would seek a similar type of method here. So in meeting with Modrell Sperling, they had advised that we would need a firm like RBC Capital Markets for the placement of that financing. So under the agreement, RBC Capital Markets would act on Raton's behalf as far as placing that financing deal and finding us the best deal with commercial banks. We anticipate that there would be a lot of interest in that, and we of course would really like to talk to our local banks about doing that. In general, we plan to finance $750,000 for construction of the solid waste transfer station, and we would propose to pledge the environmental gross receipts tax increment that is 1/16 of a cent, and we anticipate the term would be 15 years. So that is the short story on the financing, and I would answer any questions that the commission may have.
Any questions for Mr. Berry? And if I'm reading this right, they're basically their fee for our project, we would be out about 20 grand.
That's correct, Mayor. Yes, and it's very similar to the module spreading
Right.
contract as far
Right.
as the fee, yes.
Any other comments, questions?
Make the motion to approve the municipal advisory agreement between the city of Redstone and RBC Capital Markets LLC.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agreement between the City of Raton and RBC Capital Markets LLC. Is there any additional comments, questions? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item O, deliberate and act on financial advisory services proposal from RBC Capital Markets LLC for the solid waste transfer station financing. Mr. Berry.
And so, Mayor and Commission, this is another instrument that would be for basically the services that I had previously described. It would not be a separate event here. It's, again, for their services related to the financing of our solid waste transfer system. I would add that we would anticipate that upon your consideration of the agreements here tonight and authorization to proceed, we're ready to go with the project. The City of Raton, Module Sperling, and then talking to RBC Capital Markets, we're all ready to go. We would, of course, bring an ordinance to the commission, similar to the process we did with CoBank financing. That would take several meetings, and we would anticipate that in the end, funding would be available around July 1st in the new fiscal year, and that also we would request sealed bids and bring a bid for construction of the project to the commission on or around that time as well, and try to coordinate that and be ready to go to construction. And then once we award bids for construction, we would anticipate that it could be about a 6 to 8 month construction time. So early in the year 2020, we would anticipate that the facility would be ready to go to work.
Cool.
I'll move to approve the financial advisory services proposal from RBC Capital Markets LLC for solid waste transfer station financing.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept the proposal between RBC Capital and City of Raton for the solid waste transfer station financing. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item P, deliberate and act on Resolution 2019-10, records retention schedules. Mr. Berry?
And Mayor and Commission, I will yield the floor to the City Clerk Treasurer, who's put together this and the budget adjustment to follow.
Mayor and Commission, you do have a resolution in your packet, and it's to adopt the new records retention schedules. We did receive notification back in December that the newly adopted retention schedules were available, and that we did need to go ahead and formally adopt those by resolution. The state had made some changes, and so you'll see in the resolution it does say that any previous retention schedules and email policies would be rescinded and that we would now follow. So I didn't give you a copy of the retention schedules, but I have them here in my binders. So what we're proposing is to adopt the resolution this evening, and then we would probably have training with staff and all of our departments, because as you know, the city is responsible and manages a lot of records for a lot of different departments. So we do rely on the assistance of probably assigned individuals in each department to make sure that we're properly managing the records. And so, you know, we've done kind of a poor job over the years of any type of destruction of records. So we've just got boxes and boxes. And so, you know, every record that we create here in the city has a life. And I mean, some may have a 3-year life, a 6-year life, and then there are records that are permanent, such as minutes, ordinances, resolutions. And so we definitely want to safeguard those records. But we're on overload. And so we really need to make an effort to start sorting through a lot of the paper that we've accumulated over the years, and hopefully continue with our document scanning, which has been really valuable in searching for records to quickly retrieve a record and not have to dig through boxes. So it's a big undertaking, so we're just proposing that we would start this evening by adopting the new schedules and guidelines, and then proceed with the training, and really probably establish kind of a plan of attack, how we're going to address this moving forward.
Any questions for Michael Ann?
Make a motion to approve resolution 2019-10 records retention schedule.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2019-10. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Michael N. Item Q, I'll give it to you. Resolution 2019-11, City of Raton fiscal 19 budget adjustment number 9.
So in your packet, we do have a budget adjustment. You'll see that I think several meetings ago we did vote to opt in to the November municipal, it's called the local government election. And so that does require us now, moving forward, to pay an annual assessment. So we have been invoiced by the Secretary of State's office, and that annual fee will be $1,250. So we normally wouldn't have election costs in an even-numbered, odd-numbered years, because our elections would normally fall in the even-numbered years. So we did not budget for that, and so I'm requesting adjustment for that amount. And then we will, in next year's budget, we'll just put that amount in there every year. And that's based on a percentage of our general fund expenditures, is how they arrived at that figure. Other than that, I just have some various line item adjustments, and then also, as we discussed when we awarded the Economic Development Services RFPs, 58,000 of that, and I think it was a total of 126,000 that we awarded. 58,000 would come out of the general fund, so I've added that new line item. And then also under Fund 218, you'll see the other 68,000 to fund the contracts for Center for Innovation and High Bay would come out of those remaining funds that we've had in the revolving loan fund. Other than that, we did approve at the last meeting the improvements to the Schuler Theater. We are going to reclassify some funds that we had originally approved in this year's budget to do some improvements at the convention center, which probably will be delayed till next year. So we'll just reauthorize those funds to the Schuler improvements. And I believe that was it. The rest were just line item adjustments.
Any questions, comments?
I'll move to approve budgeted, resolution number 2019-11, budget adjustment number 9 for fiscal year 19.
Second.
We have a motion to approve resolution number 2019-11, budget adjustment number 9, fiscal year 19. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item R, City Manager's Report. Mr. Berry.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. Present here, we have Mr. Campbell from Raton Waterworks, and I can tell you that that's a pretty busy guy. And so he tells me that today he had a construction coordination meeting with the contractor that will be doing the renovation of the water treatment plant. That's a large project that we've worked on for some time and we've talked about extensively here. So that contractor is RMCI. They were in town today just to try to coordinate some of this activity prior to the commencement of construction, but they do plan on starting in March. The challenge there is that Mr. Campbell, his crew, and the contractor will need to provide drinking water and fire protection water during the entire time of this construction. And so we can't shut the plant down, but we need to do a major renovation to it. So they have talked about how they will accomplish that, and we would estimate that the construction would take about a year. And so we'll start on that, and we'll talk about that project a lot as we go. Mr. Campbell tells me that Maloya has steadily risen over the winter, in which mostly we are able to divert water from the Cimarron River. When we get in a cold snap, the freezing on the river becomes an issue, and that time we'll supplement that with water from Lake Maloya. But Maloya has come up pretty steadily. I think we're at about 4.5 feet below our spillway crest currently, and that's a pretty manageable level for where we're at in the year. So we would estimate that slow increase in Maloya will continue throughout the spring. And I know that they've dealt with a number of incidents involving frozen meters, service lines, some leaks, some broken service lines. His crew has been pretty busy out there with various things. Public Works crew has been pretty active also. They've been busy when the weather allows on pothole patching. Kearney is one of those that we talked about previously, spent quite a bit of time using our asphalt milling recycling equipment. So they're getting good use out of the equipment that was brought on recently and trying to keep up with streets. This week, Public Works crew has dedicated some effort to a project on Price Street. That's off a street north of the Clayton Highway in our business district, and we've had a particular chronic drainage problem in this area of street. So we'll do phase 1 with our crew, and then ultimately when we have contractor services available, we'll go back and try to overlay that piece of the street. But the crew will be out there through this week and some into next week resolving this drainage issue on Price Street. Solid Waste has got a project as far as disposal of tires. Again, those tires seem to add up, and so they're working on a couple of things related to tire disposal, and I'll report back to you on that as we go along. I attended a communications meeting, which most of the commission was present at as well, here in the commission chambers, that consisted primarily of the Trust for Public Land and the Nature Conservancy, as well as New Mexico State Parks, and we discussed coordination of our efforts with those groups as far as operation of the Lake Dorothy Wildlife Area, Sugar Creek Canyon State Park, and the proposed Fisher Peak Ranch Park. And so we learned from those groups that the proposal is to close on the purchase of around 20,000 acres in Colorado, and then develop that for outdoor recreation purposes. And of course, we're really excited about that in Raton because we see it tying well to our Dorothy and our Sugar Creek Canyon State Parks, and really being an attraction for tourism to this area, and being very beneficial to Raton and Trinidad. And so really appreciated the information that we received. It's going to be a long-term project. They stated that, they plan on working on this really over the next 4 years, developing the plan, and I think we want to do our planning as well. So in following up on that, I've scheduled a meeting with the director of New Mexico State Parks at her office in Santa Fe on Friday. Commissioner Chavez will accompany me to that meeting, and we'll work on that from our side as well, and I'll report back to the commission as to this partnership with New Mexico State Parks and the city of Raton. That's all I have, Mayor.
All righty. Any other comments? Commissioner Chatterley? Commissioner Giacomo? Commissioner Chavez? No. Mayor Pro Tem?
I have none, thank you.
I have none either. Seeing no more business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.